as I said before, Rand is indebted to Aristotle. Aristotle, unlike Plato, just a quick side note so that you have a historical understanding of how this epistemological argument unfolds. Plato believed that you had this world here and you had a transcendental world out there, right? And that the forms existed out there. So for example, I might have a picture of my daughter, and I say, well, isn't that a beautiful picture? And Plato would say, well, there's something more real than that picture. It would be your daughter holding the actual flower. So there's more ontological reality in her beauty than in the representation of her beauty in the picture. But then Plato says, well, then you have the concept of beauty, right, which exists in the ether. Aristotle is specifically denying that, right? What Aristotle wants to do is locate the form of, for example, beauty, the form of triangle, the form of book, the form of chair, the form of anything within the material world. And that's exactly what Rand's trying to do. She wants to deny the existence of forms governing definitional accounts, this complicated stuff, as existing in the ether. Rand and Aristotle want to say that that form, that descriptive account, exists within the objects themselves. The way that we get access to this descriptive account, according to Rand, she doesn't say it just yet, but she will. And I mentioned this previously before, is through the language of mathematics and logic, right? And in a sense, this is somewhat true, right? Our mathematical abilities allow us to describe facts of the world. There are complications to this, and I don't know how Rand would respond to this. Just one quick side note, how do you mathematically identify emotions? How do you mathematically identify love and happiness? You really don't, right? So it's not that she might have an account for it, I don't have an account for that. And I'm not sure that I would believe an account of that. There are some things that I think, escape logistical or mathematical quantification, right? Description. All right, so what we're able to do then from this idea of unity, right? We're able, from this idea of unity, to recognize measurement, right? And I'm going to go into a second sort of how she emphasizes. She places a great deal of emphasis on the concept of measurement. So here's a direct quote from the text. She says, quote, "Measurement must exist in some quantity," right? Measurement has to exist in some quantity, but may exist in any quantity, right? And I'm going to return to this example in a little bit, right? So what does that mean? Well, imagine that we have something of that length, right? And then imagine we have something of that length. And then imagine we have something even longer. What she's saying is measurement must exist in some quantity, right? And she doesn't mean just measurement in terms of length, and I'll get to attributes in a second. But it can exist in any quantity. And we're going to see what the epistemological importance of that claim is in a minute. Okay. Alright. The next point is the attempt to associate the role of language and epistemology, right? What is the epistemological role of language? That sounds like a mouthful, but all that's saying is, what is the role of language in our acquisition of knowledge? How do we use words to make us smarter, right? What's the role between me talking, blabbing, blah, 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 and someone being able to transform those words into knowledge, or into a building, or into a bridge? How is that done? So this is epistemology and language. Alright. Another quote from Rand, she says, "Language is the exclusive domain and tool of concepts," right? Language is the exclusive domain and tool of concepts. What we're attempting to do in this chapter, what she's attempting to do, the title of the chapter is Concept Formation. She wants, I have to commend her for this. What she's attempting to do is to show you, in the simplest language possible, but it's extremely complicated, how to think, right? How to arrive at a concept, right? How to come up with your own creative ideas. the first thing to recognize is that words denote concepts. So what we're going to do now is, she doesn't do this explicitly, but I'm going to do it so that you can see it. We're going to symbolize her argument. We'll see the nature of the structure. It'll end up being a hypothetical syllogism, and we'll see the conclusions that she draws from this logic. So the first thing is to recognize that words denote concepts. So, in the previous video, to show you how words denote concepts, as I said before, a big sci-fi fan, read the Potter series. J.R. Rowling's creates this term muggle. The word muggle denotes the idea of a person who is unable to practice magic. So as I said before, instead of saying, you know, a person who practices magic, a person who does not practice magic walks into the room, you can say a muggle walks into the room. It has exactly the same meaning. The meaning isn't lost, right? So if we were to symbolize it, the meaning is exactly the same. What she's done is she's simplified her language, right? So now we don't, you know, with less words to mean exactly the same thing. So we know that this is true, right? Words denote concepts. Triangle, the word, denotes an enclosed geometric figure, three-sided figure with interior angles totaling 180 degrees, right? And so on and so on and so on and so on. The beauty of epistemology is attempting to take words that are very, very, very difficult to conceptualize in words. It's easy for me to be able to use the word triangle and give you a definitional account of it. It's easy for me to use the word muggle and give you a definitional account of it. It's very, very hard to take the word happiness and give you a definitional account of happiness. It's very, very hard for me to take the word peace and give you a definitional account of peace, right? In order to be able to do that, you have to start at a very rudimentary level and attempt to really just define the most basic, mundane things in the world, right? So this is good practice. The next thing to recognize in the syllogism is that concepts for Rand, right? Concepts are transformed into mental entities, right? Concepts. So now we see concepts here. So we go back to concepts. Concepts are transformed into mental. Right, so we'll say that this is 1, this is 2. Okay. So words denote concepts. Concepts are transformed into mental entities, and this is important. This word entities is important, and I'll return to that in a little bit. Okay. So if we say that words denote concepts, and concepts are transformed into mental entities, we can recognize, right? Words denote concepts, and concepts are transformed into mental entities. Well, we can recognize that words, what's the conclusion, right? Words create mental entities through the use of concepts. I hope I didn't lose you, right? It's just a syllogism, right? Words denote concepts. Concepts are transformed into mental entities. Therefore, our conclusion is that words create or transform concepts into mental entities, right? So words create mental entities. The example that I gave to prove that she's right in this claim is I am going to use these words, and even if you don't want to have the mental entity, it's impossible for you not to have the mental entity, because words create mental entities. I want you to have the idea, the mental entity, let's be specific. I want you to have the mental entity of a circle. I shouldn't draw it, but I want you to have the mental entity of a circle, and inside of that circle there is a triangle. If you speak the same language that I speak, and you know what a circle is, and you know what a triangle is, and you know what inside means, then it's impossible for you not to have this idea in your head. You have to have that idea. Now it might be something like this, it might be something like this, but it's all the same, right? Words denote concepts. Concepts are transformed into mental entities. Therefore, words create mental entities. And I just showed you. I spoke words and you had a mental entity. Okay. Okay, create mental entities. She then wants to move, right, because we know in forming our development of existence, right, what existence is, we go through 3 stages. The first stage is entity, recognition of entities. The second stage is identity, a recognition that that is a square, or that is a triangle, identity. The last stage is unity, right, or concept formation, right, unity. So we go from entity to identity to unity. At the next level, we recognize, and she says, that definitions furnish or provide or create identity, right? Definitions furnish, provide, create identity. I erased it, but the definition of a triangle identifies a triangle. I am able to use that definition and use that definition as sort of a map, just like I would use like a Google map ad, right, to get me to a place that I've never been before. The definition of a triangle would lead me into the world to find that thing that conforms to the definition, so that definitions identify, right? And this is, I mean, this is necessarily the case. Okay.